Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Miftahul Ghanniyah. So in this occasion, I would like to explain my understanding of the reading materials about language acquisition and language learning. I already mentioned about the distinction between these two in the first video, but now let's get to know deeper about this topic. So, there is a theory called the acquisition learning hypothesis by Kharsen that can explain about this one. So this theory says that there are two different ways people pick up the language. The first one is called acquisition, which is how the children learn their first language without really thinking about it or without a formal instruction. And the other one is called learning, which is when we consciously study the rules of the language. And so the acquisition is actually when we learn by using a language in real life situations, like talking to people. It's kind of like how children learn their first language by hearing and using it in everyday life. And on the other hand, learning is when we sit in the classroom and we study the grammar rules or the vocabulary. So the important thing about this theory is the difference between using a language in meaningful ways, like talking to friends, or just learning the rule of the language in the classroom. However, there is a problem with this theory because it's hard to tell when someone is using a language naturally or consciously. It's tricky to know if a person using a language rule, they have learned about it, or it's just come naturally. But still the idea that there is the difference between acquisition and learning has had a big impact, especially on language teachers. It helps to explain why some things like using the right verb forms in a sentence can be hard to teach, even when the students already know about the rule. So according to this theory, the student might already know about the rule, but they haven't picked up it naturally. So there's also a debate about whether the knowledge that gained from these two ways of learning can eventually come together or become one unified understanding of language. And this debate is still going on until today. So yeah, it's still debate. The debate is still going on. And the next one, okay, so actually this theory this hypothesis is one of 5 hypotheses in Kharsen's monitor model theory. So which means there are 4 other hypotheses from the Kharsen's theory. So the first one is what I already explained, the acquisition learning hypothesis, and the second one is monitor hypothesis. So it says when we acquire language naturally, it's used automatically, while when we learn a language, it's more like when the language that we learn, it's more like a monitor. It's more like a monitor that that can check and correct our speech. And the next hypothesis is the natural order hypothesis. So this hypothesis says that we acquire the role of a language in a predictable order, with some being learned earlier and others later, something like that. And the next hypothesis is the input hypothesis. So this hypothesis says that this hypothesis says that we progress in language development by receiving input which is slightly more advanced than our current levels of language competence. So this comprehensible input helps us to learn and to improve our language skill. And then the last hypothesis is the affective filter hypothesis. So this hypothesis says that the learner is not only need the comprehensible input, they also need to be received to it emotionally. So the affective filter is like a mental barrier that can block and allow the input to reach our language acquisition part in our brain. So yeah, that's all about so guys, that are from me about the language acquisition and language learning, the distinction between these two, and also in addition the theory, the Kharsen's monitor model theory. And that's all from me guys. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for watching.